What is up, everybody? How you doing? Well, that was a week to remember. Welcome to it's the NFL guy. Recaps podcast show. Where we're gonna just go over the scores, talk a little fantasy, how I did on my four players to shine, my three bold predictions. I mean, oh my gosh, we had rain in Chicago. We had rain. I was gonna say Chicago. Chicago. We had rain in Chicago. We had the Rams offense stinking. We had the Chiefs as a blowout. We had kickers missing. We have bad decisions at like 4th and 5.
Guys, dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
Exactly. Oh, man, I tell you, it was such a crazy weekend. First, I want to check in with, before we get going, I want to check in with my friend Jimmy Babaganoush. Hey, Jimmy Babaganoush, how did you do on this week's fantasy, your fantasy football teams?
Could be worse.
Oh, well, I mean, hey, you know what? I mean, yeah, I didn't do all that well, but hey, it's the first week. Second week's here. We could do better in fantasy football and stuff and everything. So let's get to my picks. I went 8-7 and one tie this week for my NFL picks, and let's start it off with the Thursday night game, which I picked the Rams over the Buffalo Bills, but it turned out the Buffalo Bills was too much for the Rams. The Bills won 31-10, and hey, Yakko, what did you think of the Rams offense? Yeah, it did. It definitely did stink. But hey, you know what? The Bills. Yeah, this was a kind of a shocker. I thought that I think I picked that this one was actually going to be like in the 30s for each team, or at least like 27-28 or 30-27. But yeah, 31-10. That's crazy. We're also going to go over some just a few players. Fantasy football standout. And I actually, well, that's the first game I lost on Thursday night. So I'm 0-1. Cooper Kupp ended up having 18 fantasy points. He's just picking up from last year. Matt Stafford, 7 points. Oh my God. Like, really? Like, I'm not going to drop. I'm sure there's going to be people out there that's going to be like, fuck Matt Stafford. I'm dropping him this week. No, don't drop Matt Stafford. The Rams are going to be better. They're going to be better in week 2, at least. God, I hope they are. But yeah, it was just, it's the week 1. It's week 1. Everybody's getting the rust out. I know there was preseason. The starters don't really play in preseason. The Rams and Matt Stafford will be fine. Also, on the other side, Josh Allen had 31 fantasy points. He had a great game. And Stephon Diggs had 18 points. So yeah, definitely what a way to start off week 1 for the Bills with a win. Well, then my upset pick for the week, I predicted that the Lions was going to upset the Eagles, and it turned out the Eagles won 38-35. But man, I tell you what, the Eagles were up big, and then the Lions came back. DeAndre Swift had a really big fantasy game, 23 fantasy points. Amon St. Brown had 12. Jamal Williams, 15 fantasy points. They got a really nice 1-2 punch in their running back. And for the Eagles side, Jalen Hurts had 24 fantasy points. Devontae Smith had 0 fantasy points? Like, what happened? Did Jalen Hurts not throw the ball to Devontae Smith? What the heck happened there? So, I don't know. Hopefully, maybe the Lions will bounce back in week 2. Next, we have the Vikings and the Packers, which I definitely picked the Vikings to win, and they won 23-7. And wow, only 7 points for the Packers. It was something. So for fantasy points, Dalvin Cook had 10 points. I really thought that he was going to blow up in this game, and Justin Jefferson had 30 fantasy points. So Justin Jefferson actually played really good, had a big monster game. So, hey, you know what? Michael Irvin was talking about how he might be MVP candidate Kirk Cousins. I'm like, whoa, Kirk Cousins? Are you kidding me? So we'll just see what happens with Minnesota Vikings going forward. On the Packers side, let me get my sheet here. The Packers side, Aaron Rodgers, 3 fantasy points. Aaron Jones, 7 fantasy points. But hey, A.J. Dillon had 15... excuse me, I was going to hiccup. 15 fantasy points. And like I said, like when I was talking about fantasy football earlier before the season, that, you know, possibly A.J. Dillon could have a better fantasy football year than Aaron Jones. And a lot of people like Field Yates and a lot of other people online has been talking about A.J. Dillon. So if A.J. Dillon is there in your free agent pool, dude, pick up A.J. Dillon. And also, like, that was my first win, obviously, like I said. And next, we are going to talk about
The Bears. The Bears.
Yeah, how about that? My Bears looked great on Sunday, but man, it was raining. Bears win 19-10 over the 49ers, and I'm just wondering if this game wasn't raining, it could have been a different game. Like, David Montgomery could not get it going, but man, Khalil Herbert looked really good. I'm so glad Eddie Jackson had that interception. Jaquan Brisker, the rookie from Penn State, I think he's going to be something special. I like Dominique Robinson. He had a really good game. The defense looked really good. I like Matt Eberflus. Like, he's going to be, it seems like a good coach, so much better than Matt Nagy. I'm really optimistic about my Bears this year, and I really think we're gonna beat the Packers this week, Sunday night. I really do. I really have a funny feeling. Justin Fields had 13 points. David Montgomery only had 5 fantasy points, which is crazy. Trey Lance had 9, and Deebo Samuel had 10 fantasy points in the game. And I won that matchup. I picked the Bears. I lost on this matchup. I picked the Bengals over the Steelers, but the Steelers end up winning 23-20. And if you follow me on TikTok, it's it's the NFL guy. Like, I did the videos of all the kickers missing. There was like kicker within like 5 minutes. It was like Boswell missed, and then McPherson missed, and then Blankenship missed. And this is like, like, my friend messaged me after work, did the Colts really release Rodrigo Blankenship? I'm like, what? You know, I was like, I know he like missed a chip shot like 20 yards out, but my God, to like release him? What? But yeah, the Steelers look good. I mean, they come back and win with Boswell. I mean, he gonked that first time, which is crazy. I don't know why the kickers couldn't kick, but he made it the second time. Najee Harris had 8 fantasy points. Deontay Johnson had 3 fantasy points. Chase Claypool had 5. Joe Burrow had 18 fantasy points. Joe Mixon 14, and Jamar Chase had 18. And look, yeah, Jamar Chase is already just picking up where he left last year. And it seems like Joe Mixon is going to have another really good year if he could stay healthy. I really like this Bengals team, but it's going to be really hard to try to get back to the Super Bowl. The next matchup, I picked the Dolphins over the Patriots. I got that pick right. The Dolphins won 20-7. And let me tell you, is this the best wide receiver duel in the NFL with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill? Like, I love this matchup a lot. For fantasy side, Tyreek Hill had 10 points. Jalen Waddle had 13 fantasy points. Damian Harris had 5, and Hunter Henry only had 2. But I know Mac Jones got hurt, but I don't know if Mac Jones got hurt in the middle of the game or in the fourth quarter. I don't know. Like I said, I think that was a 1:00 game, so I was more paying attention to my Bears game on Fox. So at least this Sunday, I get to watch NFL Red Zone all freaking day. So that's going to be awesome to catch all the 1:00 and 4:00 games, since my Bears don't play until 8:20. I like the Dolphins this year. I think even Tua had a really good game. I didn't write down his fantasy stats, but yeah, I think Tua had a really good game. So it's going to be really interesting to see what this Dolphin team is like going forward. The next matchup is the revenge game. I pick the Panthers over the Browns. I lost on that matchup. The Browns won 26-24. And Cleveland was up in this game, and I was like, oh, well, so much for shake and bake Baker Mayfield to try to beat his former team. But then the Carolina Panthers came all the way back, but they still lost. And Nick Chubb's had a really good game, 14 fantasy points. And Kareem Hunt had 19 fantasy points, which I still feel like this is the best 1-2 punch running back in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey had 11 fantasy points, and David Moore have 5 fantasy points. And a lot of people have been talking, is this like, should fantasy football players be really scared about David Moore? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, Baker Mayfield. I just don't see Baker Mayfield staying in Carolina that long. I feel like Carolina's going to look to the draft next year to find a quarterback. Next we have the Colts and Texans, which I could not believe the Texans was up in this game. When I turned that on, I think NFL Red Zone during the commercial during the Bears game, I was just like, are you kidding me? I'm like, what is going on with the Colts? What's going on with Jonathan Taylor? How is the Colts only having 3 points? I'm like, did Jonathan Taylor and Matt Ryan get hurt? I picked in this matchup the Colts over the Texans, but this game tied. So in overtime, and Jonathan Taylor had 23 fantasy points. Michael Pittman had 18. Brandon Cooks only had 8. And Dameon Pierce only had 3. So I didn't really see how well David Mills did in this game. I didn't really check his stats. But yeah, I think the Colts will obviously bounce back. Like I said, it's week 1. I don't know about the Texans, but hey, I love Lovie Smith. I wish he was still there in Chicago. But yeah, I just... the Colts will get, their offense is going to get going. The next matchup is the Saints and Falcons. I had the Saints over the Falcons in this matchup. I won, but literally I thought I was going to lose this matchup when I turned on NFL Red Zone. A Young-Hoo Koo was going to kick a 65 or was a 67-yard field goal, and it got blocked. I was just like, oh my God, if he would have made that, that would have been freaking insane. Alvin Kamara, he had a really bad game. Only 4 fantasy points. But hey, let's give it up for Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas, everybody. 17 fantasy points for Michael Thomas. It's so good to see him back. I hope he can stay healthy. I remember way back when Michael Thomas used to be like the number 1 receiver coming off. And I can't remember, but I am 90% sure that I could never get Michael Thomas. And I officially have Michael Thomas on my team this year. So I'm hoping he can stay healthy because he was still there. Like, I'm just like, okay, I know people are scared about his health and stuff, and he can never stay healthy. Michael Thomas was still there in like the 12th round. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's a high risk, high reward. And if he can stay healthy, oh my God, like seriously, high reward for Michael Thomas and for fantasy football players all over. Cordell Patterson's picking up where he did last year with 19 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts only had 1 fantasy points. I really like Drake London. He had 7 fantasy points, but I just feel like he's going to become Mariota's favorite target, and I think he's just going to have. I'm going to predict he's going to have a double-digit fantasy football game this weekend. I think that's going to be one of my bold predictions with Drake London. The next matchup we have is the Ravens and the Jets. The Ravens, I picked the Ravens over the Jets, obviously, and the Ravens won 24-9. Lamar Jackson, 20 fantasy points, and Mark Andrews only had 5 fantasy points. Oh my God, could you imagine, like, if you had Mark Andrews on your team and you needed Mark Andrews to have at least 10 fantasy points and he only scored you 5? Oh my God, my laptop would be out the window. Breece Hall only had 4 fantasy points. Michael Carter, 10 fantasy points. And I love the coach for the Jets this morning was like, we're taking receipts. You know, people want to mock us and stuff. Yeah, we're going to keep receipts. And I'm like, you guys are going to lose like a lot of games. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, the Jets seems like once again is going to have a really bad year. In the next matchup, I took the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Washington Commanders, and the Commanders won 28-22. Carson Wentz, 27 fantasy points. What? People are going to be like, oh, I gotta pick up car wreck Wentz. I gotta pick him up. They're like selecting, like hitting the button. That's what it is. They're selecting the button, everybody. And I'm like, chill out. Just chill the fuck out, everybody. Take an anxiety pill. Have a Coke and a smile. They're playing the fucking Jaguars. I don't trust Carson Wentz to last that whole season to put up fantasy points like this. I do like Jahan Dotson, the rookie from Penn State, the wide receiver, 15 fantasy points. And I think like him and McLaurin, if McLaurin stays in Washington, I don't know if he's going to finish this year, but man, if Washington can get a quarterback, I'm going to say that McLaurin, like this could be a top 10 best duo in the NFL with Dotson and McLaurin. On the Jaguars side, James Robinson had a big game, 18 fantasy points. Travis Etienne only has 6 fantasy points. So it looks like James Robinson is still going to be a big part of the offense. I don't know. This is Travis Etienne's first game back from being injured, so he's going to get going. So everything's going to be all right for Travis Etienne going forward. I took the Titans over the Giants in this next matchup, but the Giants end up winning 21-17. 20, and what a bold move by the Giants coach, going for 2. Saquon Barkley getting in the end zone for 2 points. Another missed opportunity for a kicker. Bullock missing the winning shot, which I was just like, oh my god, missed the field goal. Unfreaking believable. Hey, let's just give it up for Saquon Barkley. You know what? Give it up to Saquon Barkley to having a really good game, having a really good fantasy game. I stayed away from Saquon. Hey, if Saquon has a really great year, that's awesome. Like I said, I'll start looking at Saquon next year and McCaffrey. If they finish the season out, I don't even know if Saquon Barkley is even going to be in New York next year. But anyway, Saquon Barkley, 27 fantasy points. He had a really great game. Ryan Tannehill had 19 fantasy points. Derrick Henry only had 8 points. Like, what is happening? What? How is that? How is that possible? I know the Giants' defense isn't that great. Derrick Henry couldn't get it going? Like, David Montgomery couldn't get it going? I'm like, what? Okay. But yeah, you know what? Derrick Henry, I could say maybe next week he's going to blow up. You know, hey, like I said, it's week 1. You got to get the cobwebs out. You know, you got to just everything's going to be okay. Fantasy football owners, don't try to trade Derrick Henry. I was going to say drop Derrick Henry, but don't be stupid and drop him either. But yeah, Derrick Henry is going to get going. He'll be fine. This matchup, I picked the Chargers over the Raiders. I won on that matchup. The Chargers won this matchup 24-19 over the Raiders, and this is the one matchup that I predicted the score. I said the Chargers were going to win 27-24, and I came close on the Chargers score, and I came so close over the Raiders score. I came so close calling the game score for this. On the fantasy football side, Justin Herbert, great fantasy football. Week 1, 23 fantasy points. Keenan Allen only had 6 fantasy points. Austin Eckler only had 7 fantasy points. On the Raiders side, Josh Jacobs only had 7 fantasy points, but Josh Jacobs will get going. It's just that Chargers defense is really, really good, so they probably couldn't get any big runs. And Devontae Adams, he's just picking it up like where he did from last year with Green Bay, 20 fantasy points. Next matchup, I picked the Chiefs over the Cardinals. I got that matchup right. The Chiefs won 44-21, and I had no idea that this game was going to be a huge blowout. I honestly thought it was going to be a lot closer, but hey, you know what? You can tell the effects of DeAndre Hopkins not being in the lineup and being out for 6 games, because that I think the Cardinals is going to lose quite a bit unless they're playing a team that maybe isn't too good. But if they're playing a really top offense like Kansas City or like, let's say, Buffalo, I think the Cardinals are in big, big trouble. Fantasy side, Patrick Mahomes, 34 fantasy points. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, if you played any of the Kansas City Chiefs, wow, you got some monster fantasy points. CEH, 19 fantasy points. Travis Kelce, 18 fantasy points. Marquez Valdez Scantling, 4 fantasy points. I honestly thought he was going to have like in double digits. How about Isaiah Pacheco? I think that's how it is. Pacheco? Pacheco, the rookie from Rutgers, 12 fantasy points. I'm telling you, like, I like this guy from Rutgers. A lot of analysts has been saying, hey, keep an eye on Isaiah. He's a good late round flyer. The Cardinals side of fantasy, Kyler Murray, 20 fantasy points. James Conner, 11 fantasy points. And Marquise Hollywood Brown, 10 fantasy points for him. I'm sure the Cardinals are going to get their offense going, But like I said, it's going to be really, really, really tough without DeAndre Hopkins for 6 weeks. And my game of the week for week 1 was the Buccaneers over the Cowboys. I won that matchup. The Buccaneers won 19-13. And on the fantasy side, Tom Brady only 10 fantasy points. Let me tell you, that one bomb to Julio Jones where he caught it and smacked his head. Oh my God. I was just like, oh my God. I was like, Julio Jones is out. He's probably going to have a concussion. But man, that was... The Buccaneers offense is going to get going. I mean, Dallas's defense is pretty good. They have a top 10 pre-ranking defense going from ESPN fantasy football. So yeah, the Cowboys defense actually was played pretty decent. And Leonard Fournette, great game for him. 13 fantasy points. Mike Evans, 13 fantasy points. And I'm gonna say Julius Jones. That's thinking of my former Notre Dame running back. Julio Jones, 8 fantasy points. But I think Julio Jones is going to get a lot of targets. So I think he'd be really good to pick up and as a flex wide receiver. So yeah, Dallas, I'm going to get the injury news in a little bit here. And we'll just talk about the key injuries from the past weekend. And then we have the next matchup, which is the Broncos and Seahawks. And boy, was I off on this game. Because I said, Denver is going to manhandle Seattle. Because you got Geno Smith there. And I'm just like, it's not Russell Wilson. But, I was like, DK Metcalf's game's going to suffer. Tyler Lockett game's going to suffer. I feel like Rashad Penny's game's going to suffer. I just thought like Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy was going to blow up in this game. Boy, was I wrong. 17-16. I picked the Broncos over the Seahawks. I lost this matchup on the pick. Russell Wilson, decent game, 17 fantasy points. Javonte Williams, 8 fantasy points. Cortland Sutton, 7 fantasy points. But hey, the star of the night, Jerry Jeudy, 16 fantasy points. I said this when doing my fantasy talk before the season. I said, you know what? Russell Wilson's favorite target is going to be Jerry Jeudy. And hey, 16 fantasy points. And I just feel like Jerry Jeudy is going to have a really, really good year. For the Seahawks side, Rashad Penny had 6 fantasy points. DK Metcalf, holy cow, 1 fantasy points? I knew DK Metcalf's game was going to suffer a little bit, but 1 fantasy points? Thank God I did not start DK Metcalf in any of my leagues. So I don't know. I'm sure DK Metcalf is going to get going. I don't know. Maybe I can sway a trade to get maybe someone else, but I do that and watch like Geno Smith like go crazy and pass it to DK Metcalf, and DK Metcalf blows up later on in the weeks. Tyler Lockett, 2 fantasy points, and Geno Smith, 17 fantasy points. I give it up for Geno Smith, man. So yeah, that is my picks, and that's the scores and the fantasy points. So oh, I forgot to mention in this game. Before we move on. Like, seriously, oh my God, this racks my brain. Nathaniel Hackett, I think that's the Denver coach. Okay, like, I'm not too familiar with the Denver Broncos kicker, so, I mean, offhand, so I don't know if he's like really good, he's average, he's poor, but you know what? When you have somebody like Russell Wilson as your quarterback, and it's 4th and 5. I would think the odds would be better for Russell Wilson to run that play on 4th and 5 and possibly get the first down. And then you're closer. Get closer. I mean, there's a 50-50 chance. I mean, Russell Wilson could have hiked the ball, went back, and saw Jerry Jeudy, and then a guy could have, defensive back could have knocked the ball out of Jerry Jeudy's hands. Or, you know, maybe like he would have thrown to the Cortland Sutton, and Cortland Sutton might have fumbled the ball or whatever. He like tried to catch it, and it like fell out of his hands or something, you know. But it's just like a 67-yard field goal when you have Russell Wilson. Like, I would put him in the top 10, top 15, like top quarterback, and you're kicking a 67-yard field goal?
How stupid are you?
Exactly. How stupid. Like, seriously, Denver beat themselves. Now Nathaniel Hackett is coming out and saying, hey, it came out in an interview today or something, press conference. He's like, if I would have done it different, if this was today and we were playing the game, I would have went for it. Well, you know what? It's a little bit too late now. Okay. Next, we're going to do my 4 players to shine. This is the 4 players I picked to shine in fantasy football. I picked a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end. So this week, I picked quarterback Russell Wilson to have 31 fantasy points. I got to come within 5 points to see if I can come within 5 points. I predict that Russell Wilson was going to have 31 fantasy points. He ended up having 17, so I was off by 14 fantasy points. Travis Etienne, I predicted that he was going to have 21 fantasy points. He ended up only having 6, so I missed it by 15. For the wide receiver, I picked CeeDee Lamb. I predicted that he would only have 25 fantasy points. And he ended up having, sorry, I lost my spot. Just give me 1 second. Oh yeah, CeeDee Lamb only had 2 fantasy points. Wow. So, yeah, I missed it by a lot. And tight end Kyle Pitts, I predicted that he was going to have 27 fantasy points because I really thought Mariota was just going to pass to him. He was going to have like 2 touchdowns and like over 100 yards receiving. Well, Kyle Pitts only had 1.9 fantasy points, so I missed it by 26 points. And then the next is the 3 bold predictions that I predicted. I had 3 scenarios that I thought was going to happen. And where is my, here we go. So I predicted that Russell Wilson was going to throw for 300 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. Well, I got one of it right. He did throw for 340 yards. He had 1 touchdown. Number 2, bold prediction. I predicted Mitchell Trubisky was going to throw 3 interceptions. Well, pretty good for my former Bear. 0 interceptions. And then my 3rd prediction, I picked Baker Mayfield to have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Because I really thought that Baker was going to go off on his old team. Well, I was totally off. 147 and 1 touchdown. So yeah, I was definitely off on that big time. So next we are going to do my player of the week. So This was a hard decision who I was going to go with for my players of the week. So after some consideration, I predicted, or actually I shouldn't say I predicted. Okay, hang on one second. I lost my paper. Man, I am so unorganized today. I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. It was right here with my underneath the Broncos and Seahawks fantasy points. So anyway, it's a three-way tie. So hey, Jimmy Baba Ganoush, hit that drum roll. So for my three-way tie player of the week, I went with Justin Jefferson. 9 catches, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns, 30 fantasy points. Justin Jefferson, monster game. I went with Saquon Barkley. Nice return game. It's nice to see him healthy. 18 carries, 164 yards, 1 touchdown. Monster fantasy football week. 27 fantasy points. And then my third, Michael Thomas. It's nice to see Michael Thomas finally be fantasy football relevant. 5 catches, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 fantasy points. So congratulations to Justin Jefferson, Saquon Barkley, and Michael Thomas for being, hey, it's the NFL, guys, players of the week. All right, now I like to do a little thing called, hey, you know what? Maybe, somebody should have stayed in bed, maybe watch some Netflix, put an extra blanket on their bed, fluff up their pillow and maybe didn't show up on Sunday, just say, nah, I'm just going to stay in bed today. So my pick for the week for the person or persons that should have stayed in bed, had an extra cup of coffee, an extra piece of toast, and maybe didn't show up on Sunday, that has to go to the Rams offense. Only scoring 10 fantasy points. Matt Stafford only having 7 fantasy points. I think Allen Robinson only had 1 catch for 12 yards. I mean, the Rams stunk it up. So congratulations, Rams offense, for being that person that should have stayed in bed on Sunday morning. All right, next the last thing we're gonna move to is the injury report. Yep. Okay. The injury report for Sunday. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, injuries do happen. T. Higgins suffered a concussion, and he was definitely ruled out of the game. Oh my God, Dak Prescott. Oh my God, love or hate the Cowboys. I mean, I hate the Cowboys. I am not a Cowboys fan. I've always hated the Cowboys ever since, like, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders, that whole defense of Dallas. I hate Dallas so much. Dak Prescott injured his throwing hand. He's out 4 to 8 weeks. Like, literally, I was watching the Sports Center after this game, and Jerry Jones was the one that came out and said, he suffered an injury. He's going to miss multiple weeks. And I was like, oh shit, multiple weeks. What does that mean? So literally last night they said 4 to 8. And I was just like, okay, he's probably going to be back in 6 weeks, possibly, But it's just like now they're going to try to rush him back to be back in 4 weeks. And I'm just like, well, if they're going to rush back Dak Prescott, I guess that makes no sense to actually going out and trying to get Mason Rudolph or Nick Foles or try to trade for Jimmy G. And even Keyshawn Johnson even talked about, hey, maybe this would be the perfect time for Colin Kaepernick to come back to the league. And I'm like, Colin Kaepernick? You know what? Like, he's been out of the league for 5 years. I think you have a better shot of starting Steve McNair. But anyway, he's going to try to come back in 4 weeks. Keenan Allen injured his hamstring. Mac Jones injured his back. X-rays are negative. Mac Jones did not talk to the media after, so his status is up in the air. I have Mac Jones as a backup, and my other quarterback is Matt Stafford, so I'm not giving up on Matt Stafford. I think Matt Stafford's going to bounce back. TJ Watt, a pectoral injury. Everyone feared that it could be season ending, but now on a few sites that I read this morning that TJ Watt might be out 4 to 5 weeks. Najee Harris injured his foot, but Field Yates is saying that he thinks he's going to be good to go Sunday against the Patriots. And Elijah Mitchell injured his knee. Possibly 2 to 3 weeks he's going to be out. So, hey, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to subscribe to my channel, I do my recap on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, I'm going to do my lineups, or not my lineups, my picks for the week. So I'm going to be recording that tomorrow, doing my week 2 picks, my 4 players to shine in fantasy, and my 3 bold predictions. And if I have time, I was thinking, I'm still debating that doing a special fantasy football show on Friday nights, maybe looking at that player that nobody is looking at, and you could snap them up and, maybe that player will help you win your league. So anyway, yeah, give me a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to my channel. I'm posting videos on my TikTok. It's the NFL guy, and yeah, until tomorrow, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening, and take care, and talk to you soon.